If someone knocked on your door at 1 a.m., and it turned out to be your boss, what would you do? Tonight, this single dad is about to face a moment that will flip his entire world upside down. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to True Kindness Tales. For more stories that touch the heart. Ethan never expected life to turn into a quiet storm of responsibility, exhaustion, and hidden courage, but as a single dad to his 8-year-old son Noah, every day felt like a test he didn't study for. He worked the late shift as a delivery coordinator at a logistics company, putting in extra hours because nobody else was willing, and because his boss, Ms. Alina Reyes, was known for being professional, distant, and impossibly demanding. She was the type of woman who could silence an entire boardroom with a single raised eyebrow, and Ethan, still trying to keep his life together after losing his wife 2 years earlier, tried his best to never draw her attention. But on this particular night, when the world felt quieter than usual and Noah finally fell asleep after asking if his mom could hear his prayers, Ethan sat alone on the couch, staring at the unwashed dishes and the bills he didn't want to think about. That's when a loud knock echoed through the apartment. He froze. No one visited him this late. No one visited him at all. His heart hammered as he stepped toward the door. Another knock. Sharper, firmer, carrying the weight of someone who never hesitated in life. Ethan opened the door, then nearly forgot how to breathe. Standing beneath the flickering hallway light was his boss, Alina Reyes. Wearing a long black coat over a silk blouse, her hair tied back neatly, her expression unreadable except for something new, caught in her eyes. Mr. Carter, she said quietly, I need to speak with you. Now. Ethan blinked. He tried to form words, but shock swallowed them. Ms. Reyes. It's 1 in the morning. I'm aware, she replied, stepping inside without waiting for permission. She stopped in the living room, scanning the small apartment, the toys on the rug, the stack of paperwork on the table. Something in her face softened, almost imperceptibly. Ethan swallowed hard, unsure if he should apologize for the mess or ask if he was fired. But before he could speak, Noah's soft voice drifted from the bedroom, Dad. Who is it? Ethan quickly stepped toward the hallway whispering, It's okay, buddy, go back to sleep. Alina watched the interaction, and for the first time since Ethan had met her, she looked almost human. She lowered her gaze, exhaling, her confidence faltering for a moment. I'm sorry for the hour, she said quietly, but I found something today. Something you left at the office. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. Ethan's stomach dropped. He recognized it immediately, Noah's drawing of their family. Noah had asked him to keep it safe. In the drawing were 3 figures. Noah in the middle, Ethan on the left, and on the right, a faint outline labeled, Mom. Tears stung Ethan's eyes, but he forced them back. Noah slipped it into my work folder, he whispered. Alina unfolded the drawing like it was something precious. I saw the date, she said softly. Today was the anniversary, wasn't it? Ethan nodded, unable to speak. Alina's voice shifted, quieter, gentler. I didn't know you carried all this alone. He swallowed. It's my job. She looked at him sharply. No, she whispered, it's your burden. And no one should carry that alone. Ethan stared at her, confused, overwhelmed, and suddenly terrified by how vulnerable the moment felt. Then she said the last thing he expected. Ethan, I need you to say something again. But look at me when you say it. Ethan felt as if time had folded in on itself, like the entire apartment shrank to the space between him and his boss, who suddenly wasn't acting like his boss at all. Her eyes, usually ice still and impossible to read, held warmth now, an emotion far too intimate for the woman he'd feared disappointing since the day he started his job. Say what again? He whispered, a tremor in his voice he hoped she didn't hear. Alina stepped closer, still holding Noah's drawing gently in her hands. You said it's your job. Look at me, Ethan, and tell me you believe that. He tried to lift his eyes but they dropped again, weighed down by fatigue and the invisible heaviness he carried every day. It is my job, he muttered. I'm his father. I'm all he has left. Look at me, she repeated softly, but with the firmness she used in the office. This time he obeyed, and the moment he did, something cracked open inside him. Maybe it was the long nights. Maybe it was the guilt. Maybe it was the fact that a woman who barely spoke to him unless it was work-related was now standing here at 1 in the morning, asking him to look at her like she cared. It's my job to be strong, Ethan whispered, meeting her gaze fully now. I can't afford to break. For a moment, neither of them breathed. Then Alina lowered the drawing and spoke with a tenderness he'd never expected. Being strong doesn't mean breaking alone. Ethan felt the words hit him like a warm wave against frozen skin. You don't know what it's like, he said quietly. Everyone looks at me like I should be grateful. Like I should be able to do everything. Work, parenting, grief. But I'm drowning and pretending I'm not. Alina stepped even closer, her voice softening further. You're not the only one who pretends. Something flickered in her eyes, pain, maybe memory, maybe a wound just as deep as his. Before he could ask, Noah appeared in the hallway rubbing his sleepy eyes. Dad, I can't sleep. Ethan immediately scooped him up, whispering, It's okay. I'm here. Noah rested his head on his father's shoulder, oblivious to the emotional storm in the room. Alina watched them with an expression Ethan had never seen on her before, gentle longing. Admiration. And something like regret. He loves you fiercely, she whispered. Ethan nodded. He's all I've got. You have more than you think, she replied, her voice trembling slightly. You have people who would help if you let them. Ethan didn't know how to respond. He had spent years believing no one saw him, really saw him, past the late shift hours and the tired smiles and the endless obligations. Why are you really here, Ms. Reyes? He finally asked. This isn't about the drawing. She hesitated. It was the first time he'd seen hesitation crack through her polished demeanor. I didn't come as your boss, she said finally. I came because I saw something today in that drawing. Something that made me realize, I don't want to be someone who stays distant anymore. Ethan swallowed. His chest tightened. The world felt suddenly warmer, closer, more alive than it had in years. Outside, the wind brushed past the thin apartment windows, but inside everything was shifting. Ethan, she whispered, let me help you. Noah tugged on Ethan's shirt sleepily. Dad, is she nice? Ethan met Alina's gaze again, this time without fear. Yeah, buddy, he said quietly. She might be. After settling Noah back into bed, Ethan returned to the living room where Alina stood waiting, her hands folded in front of her, her expression soft but tense in a way that suggested she was stepping outside her own comfort zone. She looked smaller somehow, no longer the unreachable executive towering above a conference table but a woman stripped of her armor, showing only sincerity. You didn't answer my question, Ethan said gently. Why really come here at 1 in the morning? She inhaled, then exhaled slowly, the kind of breath someone takes before confessing something long hidden. Because I saw you breaking today, she said. And it reminded me of the version of myself I swore I would never become again. Ethan frowned, stepping closer. What do you mean? Alina sat down on the edge of the couch, smoothing her coat as if gathering her thoughts. Years ago, she began, I lost someone too. Someone I loved deeply. I buried myself in work so I didn't have to feel anything. I became cold, efficient, distant, and people called that strength. She shook her head. It wasn't strength. It was survival. Ethan sank into the chair across from her, the weight of her confession settling between them. I didn't know, he whispered. No one does, she replied. Because I don't let anyone close. Not coworkers. Not friends. No one. She lifted her gaze, her eyes shining with a vulnerability he never imagined seeing in her. Until today. Until your son's drawing forced me to remember what I used to long for. Ethan felt a strange warmth spreading in his chest, connection, empathy, maybe even understanding. You came here, to help. No, she whispered. I came because I didn't want you to feel alone the way I did. Silence settled again, thick but comforting. Ethan leaned forward slightly. I don't know how to accept help, he admitted. I've been in survival mode for so long. Then let me be the first step, she said softly. Even if it's small. The sincerity in her voice cracked something open inside him. Okay, he breathed. I'll try. A gentle smile touched her lips, subtle, but real. She stood and walked toward the door, then paused, turning back with a look that lingered long enough to ignite something unspoken between them. Ethan, she said, her voice softer than he'd ever heard it, when you said earlier that it's your job to be strong, I want you to remember something. He stepped closer. What? Her eyes locked with his, warm, steady, honest. Strength isn't surviving alone. Strength is allowing someone to stay. He felt the meaning of her words settle deep inside him, a truth he had avoided for too long. As she reached for the door, he found himself saying softly, Alina. She turned. Thank you, for coming tonight. She held his gaze. Say that again, she whispered. But look at me. He looked directly at her, without fear, without pretending, without hiding the exhaustion or the hope rising in his chest. "Thank you," he said, "for seeing me." Her breath caught. Then she nodded, opened the door, and stepped into the dim hallway, but not before smiling in a way that promised this wasn't the end. When Ethan closed the door behind her, he felt something unfamiliar bloom inside him, not romance, not yet, but possibility. For the first time in years, he didn't feel alone. And in the quiet glow of the apartment, with Noah sleeping peacefully, he whispered a silent hope that maybe, just maybe, life was giving him a second chance. And if you felt this story touch your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe to True Kindness Tales for more beautiful stories every day.